Welcome to a new series, a new installment on Kups, the Cine Files. And this is actually the first video that we have a new little intro that you just saw there. And so there's a bunch of new stuff for 2024. So here we go. The branch is back. The Cine Files. A little bit about it before we get started here is the Cine Files will be a kind of, I guess, a anthology series or a mixed bag. It will be our format for shorter form content on Kups. So things that don't require a full hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours plus conversation. And every episode, every file, if you will be something new. For this first one, going to be doing a top 5 or a countdown, a list. And it's not necessarily a favorites list or a best of list. It's just 5 things that I thought would be interesting to bring up here and discuss a bit. Of course, in all of Kups things, I don't think I've said this in the past, but I'll say it here since we're talking about it, is I'm not here to review a movie or a show or a conspiracy even or a symbol and say, well, this is the definitive movie, or this is the best movie, or this is the definitive meaning of this symbol. This is the best symbol to use, or whatnot. This is just bringing back conversation, culture to philosophy, esotericism, occultism, and film and cinema, and just bringing back conversation, good, pleasant, middle ground discussion type of talk about it. And so that's what this is. This will be a list of 5 movies that I think have interesting topics, symbols in them that you can watch it with alone or with someone and discuss that. I've done that myself in my own life. I've seen these movies and it's made me think and have interesting conversations like I'm about to have with the branch with these 5 things, with these 5 movies. Welcome back, Branch.
Thank you very much. Nice to be a part of this new series. And I like the format. We're going to be covering, 5 films today?
Yes, 5. I'm going to try to keep these Cine Files in the window between 30 and 40 minutes. So, excluding the intro, of course. But yeah, so this is going to be exciting. Is there anything you want to preface before we get into these movies, Branch?
I enjoyed your comment about the symbols and study of these films, and that that's a good point to make, is that there's usually more than one way to interpret something, especially with symbols. And in a way, it's kind of like a language that we have to learn and navigate. But movies often incorporate these themes, and I think that sometimes it's very helpful to become familiar with tropes and archetypes and things of that nature, so that when they appear in film, they're more easily recognizable. And as much as I'd hate to admit it, it seems like the key to a movie's success is how well they can sometimes execute these archetypes and stuff. So, although there may be more than one way to interpret a symbol, I do personally feel that it's very difficult for directors to depart from these archetypes and still make a good movie. So I think that there's something there under the surface that appeals to us humans in some way, shape, or form. So yes, there's the symbolism, but then there's also like the architectural format of film, and I think this probably harkens back to like the old plays and the Greek times and the
Yes.
kabuki theater of China, stuff like that. So as we explore these, I often find myself thinking about how this would translate from culture to culture, and anyway, just what part of our brain is it tickling?
Exactly, and I'm glad that you mentioned that as well. In our Gods of Playwright series, we parallel like the Golden Notes and the hero's journey. Being this archetype, this bare bones for a story that you can't escape to um, make a good story. You have to follow it. Um, Anyway, we have these root archetypes that are um, very they're encoded in our day-to-day lives, and also in the stories and things like astrology. Um, so yeah, it's there, and that differs from modern day tropes where those aren't natural. Which that could be a whole other discussion that we can get into on a later date. Um, and um, a little foreshadowing, number 5 list on our movies has to do a bit with homunculus. So I wore my homunculus shirt from One on One. I'm not saying it's homunculus, but it's homunculus.
Yeah, you'll often find a hat tip to the homunculus in many of these films too, and I think that's kind of a underrepresented trope. We talk
Yeah,
about the
in fact,
hero's
I was
journey, but
just
what
um,
about the homunculus's journey?
exactly. In fact, I was just watching uh just for fun. I was watching a episode of Dilbert, the cartoon, which is of course based on the comic strip,
Oh, okay.
and in it um they have like little things going around missing in the office, and they go to figure out why. Um, and they realize that there's a bunch of little people that live in the office. That's I guess harkens back to the borrowed words and elves and stuff like that. But how they explain it, since it's an office setting, it's old employees that's been downsized. They've literally been shrunk. They've literally been downsized into little people.
Miniatized.
Yeah, and they have risque magazines that they're looking at because it's supposed to be like adult humor, you know, adult animation sort of thing. And one of the magazines they look at the title as Hot Homunculi.
Oh, like a Playboy's version of, yeah,
Yeah,
it's kind of weird.
and I know like, that's weird. But I gotta. It was just so random because I was like, I wouldn't think a show like this would call out homunculus. Um, it was so funny. But yeah, let's get hopped on this this list. So, Joshua, did you? I think you have some IMDb pages pulled up for us that we can start with.
I do. The first is for the title Simone. And I did make a mistake. I got wiki pages for the others and got an IMDb for Simone. So my apologies for messing up the format there.
Oh,
I had
that's
intended
fine.
to get all IMDb's. So for the first one, yeah, oh, I got to do the screen share thing. I forgot about that. One moment. And so you can talk a little bit about Simone, I guess, while I
Yeah.
get this pulled up.
So, of course, like I said, none of these are in like a certain order. This is just kind of a random list of movies with interesting symbolism. And so we have this first one being Simone, or Sim 1. It's a movie starring, is it Al Pacino, I believe, plays the
Yes, that is
direct
correct.
Al Pacino. And this one is very interesting to me because it kind of, as we'll see when the branch reads the description here, it kind of possibly foreshadows what we're dealing with now with Hollywood and these streaming services, using AI. Those already, you can look online, full AI movies, right? Or scripts written by AI. You even have in the Hollywood sense, Marvel using it for intro sequences for some of their shows and stuff. So
Are you familiar
we
with the director, Andrew Nicole? Nicole?
Andrew Nicole, um, I can't think of anything else off the top of my head that I know from his catalog. Um, yeah, did you want to read the synopsis for us a little bit?
Sure. A producer's film, and we're talking about a film here, but it's about a producer in a film.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it sounds a little weird. A producer's film is endangered when his star walks off. So he decides to digitally create an actress to substitute for the star, becoming an overnight sensation that everyone thinks is a real person. And so, yeah, this is a little bit prophetic. 2002, we are only just talking and dreaming about, future flying cars, AI, robots, and all this stuff. And although we may not be as far and advanced as we thought we might be at this point in time in the future, this movie is foreshadowing some strange things that we have been seeing crop up. Um, with the whole girlfriend experience that people are now marketing to folks, AI girlfriends that don't actually exist, where you're just interacting with a chat bot and maybe
Yeah.
some AI generated images, face
Holo-
swapping on models, and just weird stuff like that. Go
Holographic
ahead.
concerts. Later
Well,
on in the
there's another
movie,
one.
yeah. Later on in the movie, he does the Disney approach where he tries to make her uh, a superstar in all sense, to make her a singer and an actress, and he uses the hologram to make it seem like she's actually performing for people. Um, so you have that as well, um, and you
May I
see
interject
in
for
the,
a moment?
yes.
Now, although I hadn't seen the movie, I did watch this trailer that's on IMDb, and I just thought it was kind of comical how he was going through all these efforts to make this person seem real, like dancing with a Barbie doll in his room, but using a lamp behind him to like cast shadow on the window, and all the paparazzi are like going crazy because they think it's Simone's shadow. Um, then when he like exits the building, I don't know who the woman is that's under the blanket or the coat, but he like throws something over somebody to make them think that, oh, it's Simone, and I don't know, maybe her hair or makeup's not done right, so she doesn't want anybody to see her, right?
Yeah,
And then he's in the car with a doll in his passenger seat, pretending it's her. So just kind of comical to see the. I guess there's a little bit of comedy woven into
yes,
this film too.
yeah. This is it's very it's very light-hearted, early 2000s type of movie, which which is a breath of fresh air with the seriousness of uh, how storytelling is today. Um, and yeah, you do see that where he's really trying to dupe people. And of course, spoilers alert. If you don't want to know anything about this film before watching it, skip a few minutes ahead of this video. Um, you um, you have a point in the movie where the secret gets out,
Uh-oh.
and people are all offended about him duping them into believing Simone is real, right? And we we kind of are seeing that today. Of course, you have some people are being honest about, yeah, I'm using AI to create this and whatnot. Um, but you, you also have, on the other hand, people that are using it that they don't want you to realize. So you have that blurring of the lines. Um, so
I
that
can
raises
actually
a
give you a
whole.
really I can give you a
Go
quick
ahead.
example of that. There's a guy on YouTube. Um, can't remember his name right now. Something Pixel, but anyway, he created like these backroom AI videos where people explore the back rooms of malls or caves or whatever. Well,
Yeah.
anyway, it was kind of creepy because he pretends like he finds this back entrance into a underground mall, and it looks very convincing. And I started looking in the comments, and people are like, "Oh, I can't believe you made this on Blender," and so on and so forth. And I'm thinking, what? This was all AI generated? And it just was kind of funny to me because, yeah, he does mention it in his description, but it's very subtle, So, if you really weren't paying attention, um, you wouldn't really know any better. And
Yeah. The
I think
whole
that
like
this is kind of where
war.
we're getting.
Yeah, the kind of the whole War of the Worlds, incident on the radio, and the whole Blair Witch Project. When the Blair Witch Project came out, is it real found footage? Or now we're going to be talking about, well, is it AI, or is it real actors, or is this
But that's the
real?
hallmark of the age that we're in, man, is something real or fake. I mean, this
Yeah,
is also with food, you know, is the food you're
exactly.
eating real? Is the entertainment you're consuming real?
And yeah, and what's interesting about this, not only does it kind of predates by a few years where we are today, and kind of foreshadows it, but it doesn't necessarily pick a side on if it's good or bad. It's just uses it as a story and leaves the audience up to kind of discuss about it after you watch the movie. Would you be offended by Simone, or would you be excited about her? And things like that. So yeah. So that's the first one. Number
Well, here's
one.
another thing. You told me the title was kind of important. Can you maybe talk about that just briefly?
Oh yeah.
I don't feel like that's much of a spoiler.
Yeah. So Simone is short for Simulation One. Um, so how it gets started is Al Pacino's character. He's kind of he's seen as like a diva. He wants to make creative, original stories, and that's not what Hollywood wants. Actors find it hard to work with him. Studios find it hard to market his movies because he just wants to be creative and tell stories. So they kind of picture him as like this very eccentric diva-like director. Um, and one day he gets this mysterious person come to him and say, "I'm a big fan of yours. I want to show you the future of something that I've made." Um, and he um, brings him to um, this building where he has on like a hard drive uh, this what he calls Simulation One, which is Simone, and that guy that creates Simulation One, Simone, he that shows Al Pacino character, he ends up dying mysteriously. And so Al Pacino character, that's why he's the only one that knows about this AI, this simulation. And he shortens the name Simulation One to Simone. Um, and of course, you have the one and the zero in her name in the title. Um, and even when he's designing her, he can edit her to um, his favorite actresses in the past. So similar to how AI works today, where it's not new stuff. It's feeding stuff in the past that you're feeding to it, or there's data from past movies or stories or whatnot, songs. It's feeding off of past things and just repackaging them up to something new. And so that is also interesting that it's showing that side of it instead of AI creating something new. It's saying like, oh no, AI is just going to be repackaging things. So we do have all these indicators that it is kind of a bit of a foreshadow per se.
Okay, so I got a couple comments, questions before we move on to the next one.
Yeah.
So, first of all, comment is that have you ever seen the AI, uh, the results of an AI when it just is fed AI stuff?
Yeah, it
Eventually,
just gets more
it
ugly
gets
and
like
more
crazy. Yeah.
incomprehensible. Like it Ouroboros itself into a black hole, essentially.
So you were mentioning how they're just kind of recycling things. So, yeah, this is a cool new frontier, but I think it also shows the limiting factors on AI that it
Yeah,
really just isn't good at creating. It's only as good as the data that's fed to it. So it almost needs humans to maintain its creative flow, if you will. So I
yes.
don't think that, you know, entertainment, as it were, is necessarily in danger of being taken over wholly by AI because, uh, I mean, we're already seeing a lot of movies today, just like with all the sequels and sequelitis, as I like to call it.
Yeah.
We're already seeing how crappy that is. So I don't know that it'll necessarily become a problem, more especially if they continue to depart from these archetypal things, because as entertainment grows increasingly unrelatable, I think it'll, dollars will begin to speak. It's like, well, I don't really get anything out of this. I don't really relate to it. So yeah, it might be like mindless consuming entertainment, but like, will it become a cult classic? Will it win an award? So
Yeah. Will it
I
be the
think that
next
when that
Godfather?
starts, yeah. See,
Yeah.
so I think that inevitably, the creativity of humans is gonna kind of win out here, and I would kind of hope that if the industry sticks around long enough, that we kind of get back to the 1980s, 90s stuff where there wasn't so much CGI and things like that. So even though this movie is a little bit lighthearted, I think at the time it was made, it was very prophetic in ways, because we're now starting to see what it was kind of portraying then. One other thing I'd like to ask is, we see here on IMDb it gets a 6.1 out of 10. So, having seen the movie, I would just ask, what would your number of stars be if anybody out there would like the recommendation?
I wouldn't really get into that. I'm not really here for that. Anyways, I'm not going to try to persuade someone to watch a movie or not. My favorite when I know when I want to watch a movie. When I hear someone talk about a movie or see a trailer, I know if it speaks that story speaks to me or not. Um, as far as on a technical sense, it was shot pretty well. Um, it had some nice cinematography um, for there was um, mid-budget movies, if you will. So yeah, a six in a technical sense does make sense. Because that's not good, that's not bad, that's average. Anything from a five to a seven, it just it's like a flat line. Those are your average movies, and so that does make sense to me. Um,
Well, thank you.
yeah,
I know you have a far more advanced technical understanding of movies, so I just thought it would
yeah,
be interesting to hear your take on that.
yeah,
Obviously, they have to be good to make it on this list. So,
yeah. Yeah. So number two,
hold on here. Is that Elemental?
yeah, Elemental. So this is a newer one, and I mentioned this in our July special that we did for July when we did our live stream. I never got around to making a full video of it, so I just wanted to throw it in here. So this is Pixar's movie for the summer of 2023. It's about um, even harkens back. Going back to Simone for a second, it harkens back to the films of that time period, where the story structure of Elemental is very much 2000s rom com. Um, and it's one of the first Disney or Pixar movies to not have a villain, which is interesting. But yeah,
Mm.
what it's about is it's a world where elements um, are alive, and there is a city that you can kind of see as New York, where all these um, elements from different areas are coming to live together, and you have different sections of the city for different elements for their preferred climate, um, and then you have kind of where they mingle together, and it kind of becomes a rom com, Romeo and Juliet, so lovers from different worlds sort of thing, where a water elemental, Wade, and the fire elemental, which her name's slipping from my memory right now, meet, and they fall in love, and they have to save her parents' business, and
Ember
also
Lumen.
yeah, Ember, yeah. Um, and not only do they have to save her parents' business, they also help each other find their passion, what they really want to do in life. She's sparks creativity within him, because he's lost, because he had just lost his father, and he's going from odd job to odd job, kind of meandering afloat in life, being very much like water. Um, and she is just going by whatever her family wants her to do, to try to live up to her family's business and her family's culture and way of life, and kind of not doing what she wants to do in life, even though she does have a passion, a creativity, a spark in her where she could establish her own life. And so it has that kind of rom-com setup. But what is fascinating to me is it really shows alchemically how these elements can work together. Literally, towards the latter half of the movie, and spoilers alert again, skip a few minutes into this video again, where Wade, um, he rescues Ember from being put out by this flood that's coming through, and he protects her, and but in doing so, her heat evaporates him, and they think that he's gone, but he actually just gets evaporated into the bricks of the building, because bricks are just they're like sponges. Bricks absorb water, and so they they realize that he's just evaporated into the bricks, and so they have to help him um, drip into this cauldron and turn back from a gas to water. So and and they do it by making him emotional, by making him cry, by saying happy things that make him so joyful that he wants to cry, and it's all the fire people that do it. So it's fire trying to bring water back into existence in a way, and you see that through this whole movie, where there's all this, I know a lot of um, alchemists that work in labs might, you know, find this offensive, but it's spiritual alchemy. It's um, emotional, spiritual alchemy within the body, and how, you know, that's why, some people might, rub certain people the wrong way, and because their personalities or their astrology signs might, conflict or may work together in a certain way. Um, and that's kind of what this movie shows, is that how alchemy um, can help with personalities, and things, affect personalities and stuff in that sense.
So I think that's a lot like the zodiacs. I mean, you kind of touched on it briefly there, but kind of like this water guy could be a Pisces or a Scorpio or I don't know why my mind's blanking, but or Cancer, and then the fire
Yeah.
person could be Aries, Sagittarius, or Leo. Um, so I think that's kind of interesting. And although you said there was no villain in the movie, which is a very interesting point to make, the villain is actually there but unseen, because the villain is all the prejudices. Like, aren't certain times in the film, aren't there like, oh, you shouldn't be dating a water guy? You know, it's like a form of racism or something.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
they
kind of
do
see
show
that as
that,
the
so that
villain.
where there's a stigma towards like, oh, or fire doesn't like water people because water puts them out, so they have an innate fear towards water people because like, well, you know, you can put us out, but water um, can also evaporate through its heat. So there's this very beautiful sequence where when they touch, they were hesitant to even touch Wade and Ember, and there was this very beautifully animated sequence where they touch hands for the first time, and um, they when they do, it the lens of the, say, if I know it's animated, but the cinematography, the camera goes into their eyes, and you see like their spirits almost like circle around each other, showing that they're when they fully touch, that's when they're um they realize they're in love, when it dawns on them that, oh, I do have feelings for this other person. And when they're circling around each other, their spirits, is one's red, one's blue, but when they come together in like this yin yang, it becomes purple. Which we will do a future episode where we do a whole thing on color, but purple is the veil of illusion, and it's also could be connected towards emotion, and having that red and blue coming together to form something new.
That reminds me of the color episode that we'll be doing with Mario here in a short period of time.
Yes. So yeah, that. Do you want to read a little bit of this for us?
I'll read the first paragraph here. Elemental is a 2023 American animated romantic comedy slash drama film produced by Walt Disney Pictures and Pixar Animation Studios and distributed by Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures. Directed by Peter Sohn and produced by Denise Ream, it was written by Sohn, John Hoberg, and Kat LaCull, and Brenda Husue. The film stars the voices of Leah Lewis, Mamoudou Athey, Ronnie Del Carmen, Shyla Omi, Wendy McLedden Covey, and Catherine O'Hara. Set in a world inhabited by anthropomorphic elements of nature, the story follows the fire element, Ember Lumen, Lewis, and water element, Wade Ripple, Athey, who spend time together in the city while trying to save a convenience store owned by Ember's father, Bernie Del Carmen. Oh, Bernie. That's a clever name for her father. Burn.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can see the appeal and charm, and this probably is good for kids, I would imagine, to warm up to the idea of relationships and things like that, and the
Yeah, it's a
difficulties.
very,
It's not always easy.
yeah, it's a very warm-hearted movie, if you will, and yeah, it can definitely you know of course, because of the prejudice element to it, you can talk about prejudice and stuff, and um, but if what I find interesting is, after watching this movie, you know you can bring a conversation up about not just relationships, but the alchemical side of the relationship of you know, what do you do when someone you like someone or someone rubs you the wrong way at first or whatnot. You can start exploring these things with archetypes or with astrology or whatever you know you fancy, and have these interesting conversations about that as well.
I actually found a better paragraph. I'm sorry, I should have been more selective. This gives us a brief synopsis. Fire elements Bernie and Cinder, Lumen, immigrate to Element City where they face xenophobia and from other classical elements. After the birth of their daughter Ember, they set up their blue flame, which represents their traditions, and start their own convenience store called the Fireplace. Several years later, Bernie intends to retire and give Ember the store once again so that she can control her fiery temper. One day, when Bernie allows Ember to run the shop on her own, she becomes overwhelmed by the customers and rushes to the basement. Her fiery outburst breaks a water pipe, flooding the basement and summoning Wade Ripple, a water element, and City Inspector, who notes the faulty plumbing. Despite Ember's attempts to stop him, Wade travels to City Hall and reluctantly files a report of his findings with his air element employer, Gale Cumulus, who will have the fireplace shut down. So I felt like that was a much better
Yeah,
synopsis.
and yeah, I'm glad that you read that, because yeah, there is that balance of Ember being hot-headed and Wade kind of balancing her out, and her doing um, the same for Wade, bring that fire under him, so he is not just so wishy-washy, ethereal, and he's actually like
Wishy washy.
doing things. So their relationship balance each other out in this way, and I think it's beautiful, um,
It's
in
kind of
that sense.
interesting too because you're a water sign, Cancer, and I'm Aries, fire sign. So, um, in that way, I think that's very true because that's kind of how we reinvigorated your project. Was I gave you the fire that you needed to, get the steam locomotive moving, right?
Yeah. Yes, yes. Yeah, so if you want to go to number three, if
Mhm.
if you have any
That
other things to say
be.
about Elemental.
I would just say that although I haven't seen it yet, personally, it kind of feels good to know that they're still trying to make quality content that's not like fully woke. And I felt like this film was sort of getting back to some traditional values of what you might expect to see in a Disney movie. Perhaps that was Pixar's influence. I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
you could probably weigh in on that better than I could. But
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
I think it's a movie that I would like to see.
I agree. That's why I found it charming. It's a simple movie, like say it just harkens back to the early 2000s rom com, which is funny because that's kind of what our our next movie that we're going to be talking about is. Um, it harkens back to that, and the innocence of love, and and finding someone that um you want to spend the rest of your life with, and create a life with, in a way, a business life, but and a home life and a family life, and all that. And I think that that's beautiful in that sense of, and not getting bogged down by any political um, woke nonsense. So yeah, I think it's very refreshing. Um,
Well, because after
yeah,
all, um, after this woke era is finished, uh, if a producer and well, I'm just saying producer, if they embraced that woke ideology too much, they risk the legacy of that film. I think that, 20, 30 years from now, people are probably going to look back on a lot of the stuff that was produced between 2000 and 2020 and think, wow, what a bunch of garbage. And, so if you want to get money for your film and you're like, oh, we'll put all this woke stuff in it, you know, just to get the movie made, but you compromise too much and you might risk the movie kind of failing in the long run, because after all,
Yeah,
some of these movies from our past we like for certain particular reasons, and none of them are because it's woke. You know what I mean? So
yeah, because it it attracts us, and there's some type of you know alchemy when we see a piece of art. That's what the whole beauty is in the eye of the beholder thing for me. It's
yeah,
not that art is subjective or objective or whatever. It's, well, whoever is making the art has a story they're wanting to tell, and it's inspired, and they have their own alchemical personality to them that is getting put on display, and then with the art, and then the person that is viewing it is bringing their own set of alchemical
exactly.
astrology and personality and perspective to it, and it's creating something that only that person really can see. And that's why some art speaks to certain people and other art speaks to certain people. It's not because of this objective subjective nonsense. It's just that it's made to spark certain things in certain people when art is done right. I mean, that can also uh, be seen in the negative sense if you want to get into like MK Ultra, why some people are easier to be under hypnosis and stuff versus other people who it's hard to be put under hypnosis.
That's a that's a good point. Yep.
Yeah,
They have to be suggestible, and in that way, I think it's kind of like they're trying to tell you what to like, rather than them creating what they think. It's like rather than tapping into what people inherently like, they're trying to tell us what to like. Is how I feel like it is nowadays.
yeah. Speaking of liking, um, I have another romance, number 3. Um, we're going a bit slow here, but I guess it's all real. This is our first signed file. Um, number 3 is Serendipity, another romance. Um, and I guess that is a bit of a theme here. Is 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 love. Um, we have serendipity, and serendipity is you know early 2000s rom-com about a man and a woman who meet spontaneously, serendipitously in New York on Christmas Eve. They're both in other relationships, but they have a certain spark um, when they meet, and they the guy is very much a realist, is very much more in you can say that masculine perspective where everything has to be physical, it has to be real, and the woman, she is she believes in serendipity and fate, you know, and all these more spiritual, philosophical, airy things. She's more free spirited, and uh, she says if they was ever meant to meet again and be together, then they will. and she buys a book in like a window and writes her number on a piece of paper and in the book. And then she tells him that the next day she's going to donate the book to a used bookstore somewhere in New York and leave it up to serendipity, leave it up to fate. If he, if he ever stumbles upon that book. And it shows you him not wanting, not believing in serendipity, not believing in fate, and wanting to just find it. So he's like trying to hunt the book down, and it takes him years, and he's unable to find the book. Then when spoilers alert again for this movie, skip a few moments. When he finally gives up, is when the doors start opening, and he is able to find the book when he gives up after years of trying to search for it, and reintroduce them back in each other's lives. So I think it's a very beautiful movie. There was even a scene towards the end where or throughout, there were multiple times throughout the movie actually, where when they are together, she's looking up at stars and she's talking about constellations, and she draws a constellation with his freckles on his arm. She connects them to make it one of the constellations, and
Which was it? Do you recall?
It's been a while since I've seen this movie. I forget what constellation she draws, but it's such a beautiful movie, and the reason why I wanted to bring it up is because his friend, who thinks he's just crazy, he tells the main guy, he goes, well, only fools fall in love. And you see this, some people might call it sundog and mooncat. But you can also see it as someone going on the hero's journey, being the fool, and well, only fools fall in love. Once he left, once he did what he needed to do in life, and he started to focus on what he needed to do in life instead of spending all his time searching for this book, leaving it up to just fate and just life. Once he was able to do that and kind of complete his own personal hero's journey in a way, then he was able to, have that love in his life again, which brings back his friend saying, "Well, only fools fall in love," and his friend not really believing in that sort of thing. And so, and again, want to go back to the whole alchemical thing that we just talked about. You have the masculine being the more realist, and the feminine being the more spiritual, philosophical side, and balancing each other out.
Well, this movie I saw when I was very young, and it was my first encounter with that sort of Mandela effect, serendipity, synchronicity type of thing. And I had forgotten about it for the longest time until you brought it up more recently. And I, I have to wonder. I now understand why I liked it so much, because it has elements of the astrology, those mystical types things, and I've always kind of been aligned with that in a way throughout my life. So I think maybe that is why I liked it so much. But it made me wonder how much it may have influenced my decision making in the future, because I a lot of times do pay attention to little signs, and I could see myself being like this girl, writing my number down, and then the wind blowing it away, and I'd be like, oh, God doesn't want me to do this,
Yeah.
So I can kind of relate to her in a lot of ways, I think, with that sort of thinking. But one of the points I wanted to make real quick was that this is taking place during the Christmas season. And so
Yes.
I recall in the past, we did a film study on Eyes Wide Shut, and it was rife with Christmas symbolism. And so, and of course, the big point that we made in that was how Christmas and the Christmas tree and the lights were all about sex and fertility and stuff like that. So even though this movie is obviously not playing that angle as much, obviously they're together and there are some sex scenes in the movie. So I'd have to wonder if there's like a small hat tip to that sort of motif or archetype, something that maybe we're not fully aware of, but in these in these realms, these people maybe are more acquainted with it.
Yeah, maybe that goes into why so many rom-coms are, set around fall or winter in New York City. That's the whole
Because they're
genre
falling
of,
in love.
yeah,
Fools
whole
fall in love. There you
that's
go.
a whole genre right there. But yeah, do you want to
And
read a little bit of
well, I
this?
didn't know what this, I didn't know what this book was about. I was hoping it would give me a little. Sometimes when you hover over it, it'll give you like a little explanation of it. I
Yeah,
don't know what love in the time of cholera is.
that's the
Go ahead.
book she writes her number in that he's trying to look for.
Well, I know, but what I meant was I don't know what it's about. But cholera is a
Yeah.
is a sickness, though, so you could, I guess, easily say love in the time of sickness or love in the time of plague,
Yeah.
because cholera kills a lot of people.
Yeah.
Just thought that was kind of interesting. So that's what she was reading when she met him. And you know what is really weird? He writes his on what, a $5 bill.
Yeah.
My stepdad used to refer to $5 bills as a fever. Some people call it a fiver, but he would
Yeah.
call it a fever. So he writes his on a fever, and she writes hers in a book called Love in the Time of Cholera. So I wonder if that was like a weird little intentional connection or
They're
not. And the
lovesick.
one other thing, yeah. And one other thing that jumped out at me was the elevator thing here. There's some type of occult significance to elevators, I've noticed, and here we see it.
Yeah.
Do you know what floor they chose? I know it's been a while since you saw it.
I don't know. It's been so long since I've seen this movie.
One thing we do
It's
know, they didn't choose 413 because there is no 13th floor.
yeah. Yeah, so if you want to maybe read a bit of the synopsis, even just the
I'll
first
read a
paragraph there.
little bit of the plot.
Yeah.
While Christmas shopping at Bloomingdale's in New York City, Jonathan Traeger meets Sarah Thomas, a British woman when both try to buy the same pair of gloves. Despite being in relationships, a mutual attraction leads them to have dessert at a restaurant called Serendipity 3. Excuse me. Where Sarah explains that she lets fate's little signals determine many of her life decisions.
Yeah. So yeah, it's
There. Maybe
it's
that's a little sign.
yeah. That is yeah, this would be a very interesting conversation to talk about with people. See, if if you believe in serendipity, if you believe in um these certain like spiritual philosophical things. Again, going back to even like using it as an example of, well, the hero, you know, he gets the love. The prince always gets the princess at at the end of the quest, sort of thing. Um, only the hero falls in love. Only the brave man can
And the
have.
term serendipity, I think, refers to a happy coincidence. I think is roughly how it translates.
Yeah,
And one other observation that jumped out at me was we just covered Elemental, which is a love story in Element City that you said was kind of maybe like New York, right? Well,
yeah,
look what we have here, a love story in New York. So the two movies there are very similar in some ways, I think.
yes, for sure. Um, and you want to go to number 4 if you have anything else to talk about with that one. Um, Number
Would
4
that
here
be
we have
Captain Fantastic?
Captain Fantastic. Um, so mixing it up here, we're not all about just rom-coms on this list. Um, Captain Fantastic. Now here's a film that can really get the discussion going. Um, so, and there was very serendipitous the way I watched this movie. Um, so I went to um, a friend. This was what, 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. The first time I watched this movie, I was with a friend, and we was going to a mutual friend's birthday party, and they had a projector in their backyard, and they was projecting movies and everything. And when we first showed up, they was playing Lilo and Stitch for all the kids. And me and my friend, when we showed up, me and her both loved uh, and find fondness in the Lilo and Stitch movie. So we was excited to see Lilo and Stitch, and we could me and her was quoting the movie because we've seen it so many times growing up. And then after the kids went to bed, um, they put on another movie for all the adults and stuff, and it was Captain Fantastic. And
Hmm.
I've never heard of the movie before, and so it was one of those serendipitous things where I watched it without any prior knowledge, and I was just blown away by it. I highly enjoyed it. Um, so it was or it is a comedy drama about a off-grid family, about two people who move out into the woods and start a family, and they homeschool their kids and many things, not just textbook stuff, but they teach their kids how to farm and to hunt and how to rock climb and how to handle all these sort of things. Um, and then um, again, spoilers alert if you don't want anything to know prior to watching the movie. The the mom ends up dying, and her family, who lives normally in the city, um, who has always never really cared for the fact that their daughter, has moved out into the middle of the woods with this guy and raised their grandkids in the middle of the woods and all this thing. They don't get it. They don't like it, and they have her funeral in the city, and they think that raising their kids, or raising the grandkids in as off grid is child abuse. So they say
Hmm.
he does come to, if he does bring him and the kids to his wife's, their mother's funeral, then they will call the cops on him and take the kids away. And so he, at first he doesn't want to even go to the funeral because he doesn't want to get his kids taken away from him. And his kids tell him, let's just face it head on. Whatever happens. We need to be there for um, for our mom. And even the mom wasn't even Catholic. She was she was actually she wanted a Buddhist funeral. So even her parents are not doing their daughter's wishes with the funeral. And so the family they have a bus that they use to go into the city to um, go to their the mother's funeral, and braves her family, faces them head on, and there's a really interesting scene where the mother's sister um, tells them, or tells the dad, your kids need to be in school. You can't homeschool your kids. And she's trying to make a point, like, they need to learn things. And he goes, okay, well, let's do this. And he gets her kids who are go through public school, who are in like early high school, and then brings out his youngest little daughter, who's like 5 or 6, and he asks the teenage boys who are in high school about like the Bill of Rights, and they go, "Oh, it's just some piece of government paper." And he asks his little girl what the Bill of Rights is, and she starts reciting it from memory. And he goes, I don't want to hear you regurgitating information. I want to hear your opinion. And she gives a full personalized opinion on what she feels towards the Bill of Rights and how,
Conveying her understanding.
yeah, and and um, then the aunt, it goes, okay, that's enough. I get it. Um, but yeah, there are pros and cons to it. Um, the the oldest boy of the off grid family, he's so smart, um, and he secretly applied to college, and he got like high scores for like, and he's like being accepted to like Harvard and all these high elite schools because of how smart he is, because of the homeschool off gridding lifestyle. Um, but he's nervous because he doesn't really have that much social skills. Uh, so they do weigh out the pros and cons of it. Of like, well, there are setbacks to completely shutting yourself off from society, right? but there are good things when you're going more root type of living. And so I think this would be a perfect movie to have a conversation, to help spark a conversation on off-grid lifestyles, and you know, and be inspired and kind of think through, like, you know, can we incorporate this, and how do we balance our lives out to be more self-sufficient, but also, you know, not be social freaks to where we can't even hold a conversation.
Well, I think that that is going to be a forced issue here before too long, because with globalism becoming such a force, it seems like they're trying to, mandate everybody's participation in this. And so I think off-grid living is kind of a natural reaction to the political environment that we're finding ourselves in today. Wokeism would just be another example of one of the appendages of that
Exactly.
that he's trying to escape, And I think that's the way everything was intended. Personally, I kind of see cities as a very unnatural phenomena on Earth.
Yes, large cities do seem to be very unnatural
and unsustainable.
Yeah. I always
And because of the fact that when you're in a city, you don't have to provide for yourself the way you would in an off-grid situation. So I think it also lends itself to warping our sense of reality, so that, for instance, the woke ideology can thrive in a city environment, because in that environment, you don't have to chop your own firewood. You don't have to raise your own animals. You're afforded the luxury of living in a delusion. Whereas in the off-grid situation, none of that stuff even computes or makes sense, and is just a waste of time.
Yeah.
So
I also
it's a good
to
movie to bring that up.
Yeah, I also like to add to that the studies on the Schumann resonance, and that scientific study they did, where they had a bunker underground that blocked out the Schumann resonance, which is the heartbeat of the Earth, the frequency of the Earth. And when they did that study and put all these college students in the bunker to get them away from it, they started to go, they started to go mad, being emotional, get ill, and all these things. And they had a little machine that would emulate the Schumann resonance, and they would turn it on and off, and they would get better when they turn it on, and then go get worse again when they turn it off. And the Schumann resonance, when they bring out detectors in big cities, there's so much chaos that you can't detect. There's so many interfering frequencies that you can't detect the Schumann resonance. It's just like,
Interesting.
how a baby in the womb, is connected to the mother's heartbeat. We're all connected to the Earth's Schumann resonance, the Earth's heartbeat in this way. And it helped, that's why grounding is so important, and things like that. Yeah. If you
And
want
I
to read
think it's really strange here too. Yeah, I wanted to read this because this surprised me when I read it. I was thinking, like, because normally when you think of off-grid, you think of somebody with more conservative values or something like that, right? Anyway, Here we go. Ben Cash, his wife Leslie, and their 6 children live on an isolated existence on 10 acres in the mountainous Washington wilderness. They are former left-wing anarchists, activists, disillusioned by capitalism and American life, who choose to instill survivalist skills in left-wing politics and philosophy in their children. They educate them to think critically and train them to become physically fit, athletic, and self-reliant without dependence on modern technology. They are raised to coexist with nature and are given unique names and celebrate Noam Chomsky's birthday instead of Christmas. The children are accustomed to reading many forms of college-level literature, and while showing high aptitude and intelligence beyond their years, they are socially awkward as they have not been socialized with the outside world. So I think it's kind of weird. I don't know if this was done intentionally as like a comedic relief or what, but you will you would be hard pressed, at least around here where I live in West Virginia. You're not going to find a uh, you're not going to find left wing politics, survivalists, uh, being athletic, and living off the grid. The only place you're going to find that around here is a hippie commune, which we do have one or two of. That is the closest you're going to get to that.
I think that was their joke of it, is they're just hippies. Is like and always hippies are always the butt of the joke in Hollywood.
But that's where hippies and conservatives really do overlap, though, would be in this, oh, screw the government, we're going to live off grid. That could be where the two overlap. And maybe that's kind of where we're headed. I mean, after all, look, this movie was made in 2016. Things have changed quite a bit since then. So I think over time, you're going to find that even though they're on totally opposite ends of the political spectrum, you're going to find these two groups of people finding common ground. And that's, hey, we just want the government to leave us alone.
Yes. So, and then number 5 in our list. 5. I did a bit of a cheat sheet. Or I'm going to do 2 movies. But that's because they're both directed by Ivan Reitman, the director of Ghostbusters and other movies, and both starring Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito. The first one is Twins from 1988. And did you want to read a bit of this, Joshua, the plot, like that first paragraph?
In 1953, Julius and Vincent Benedict are twin brothers, the result of a secret experiment carried out at a genetics laboratory to combine the DNA of 6 fathers to produce the perfect child. To the surprise of the scientists, the embryo split and the twins were born. The mother, Mary Ann Benedict, was told that Julius died at birth and was not told about Vincent at all. Vincent was placed in an orphanage run by nuns in Los Angeles and believed his mother abandoned him. With no one but himself to rely upon, Vincent seduced a nun, escaped from the orphanage, and later became an indebted, small-time criminal. Julius was raised on the South Pacific Island by Professor Warner, one of the scientists from the experiment, who put him through intense physical training and extensive study. Both believed Mary Ann died during childbirth. But in 1988, each twin is unaware of the other's existence. But on Julius's 35th birthday, Warner finally tells Julius about Vincent. With Warner's blessing, Julius proceeds to Los Angeles to find his brother. Julius eventually tracks Vincent down in jail, where he is being held for unpaid parking tickets and driving with an expired license.
Yes.
Kind of a strange story.
Yeah. And since we're doing both of them back and forth, did you want to pull up the other one so we can look at it side by side with the other movie directed by Ivan Reitman, starring Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger, and that is Junior.
Junior movie, Danny DeVito.
Oh, did he not already have it pulled up here?
Sorry, I didn't know you wanted me to have that one. But here it is.
Yeah. So,
computer's a little slower than yours, probably.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, this one
Oh
is in
dear, Arnold's pregnant.
1994. Yeah. Again, this is Ivan Reitman, Danny DeVito, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and do you want to read the first paragraph of this plot, and we can discuss it?
Austrian research geneticist Dr. Alex Heiss and his OBGYN colleague Dr. Larry Arbogast invent a fertility drug, expectane, designed to reduce the chances of miscarriage. With the drug unapproved by the FDA, the colleagues are unable to test the drug and cannot continue the research. Head of the review board, Noah Barnes, informs Larry that while the FDA denied human experimentation, the team had received a donation from geneticist Dr. Diana Redden from the Ovum Cryogenics Department. Alex plans to start over in Europe, but Larry suggests they can still perform the experiment with Canadian firm Linden Pharmaceuticals, offering to fund them provided they find a volunteer. Alex questions the likelihood of a pregnant woman taking an unapproved drug, but Larry suggests omitting the volunteer's gender and convinces him to impregnate himself with an ovum codenamed Junior. Ooh,
Yes.
this movie was a little
So
ahead of
now,
its time. I imagine
so
now it would be
now,
more successful.
so now we have the homunculus connection here. Um, so yeah, both of these films, um, you know, same cast, same crew sort of scenario, um, and the you see Ivan Reichman. He's always been fascinated with the occult and science. So you see him blending science and the occult in a lot of his stories. Um, he uses a lot of um, the same symbols across his movies. Um, he even at the beginning of Junior, um, he uses the same library as he does in Ghostbusters even, and both these movies are um, connected to homunculus and all these um, like alchemical things that have been carried over into science, where it's studies of twins and or studies of you know lab grown specimen, and so and these are both played off as humorous comedies, just like all his other movies are. Um, so these are would definitely be some movies to watch. I actually watched them back to back when I did. Um, so you see this twin symbolism, this two symbolism, um, this um, you know homunculus golem symbolism. This would be interesting um, if you guys like my deep drive-in series on the Kino Cups, and you're wanting to do your own deep drive-in night where you watch two movies back to back, and talk them up to your friends about these two movies have so much interesting symbolism when it comes to um, all of that stuff, and it's another really to really kind of get you thinking about you know ethics of all these um, you know scientific studies and experimentations, but also you know it is a comedy, so you can kind of have your laughs as well in a way. Was there anything that you wanted to say, Branch?
My question is down here. It's saying he decides to carry the pregnancy to full term. My question is, where was the baby gonna come out?
You're gonna have to watch the movie to find out. Yeah, it is.
It's kind of disgusting.
It has my favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger line, and that is, "I'm pregnant." Like the camera zooms in, like pans in, fast pan.
Which kind of
Like
reminds me, in a
I'm
weird
pregnant.
way, of Kindergarten Cop when he's trying to teach the kids about sex, right? And one little boy says, "What, men have penises, women have vaginas," or something like that. Well, I wonder if that was before or after this movie.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, here's 5 movies um that have that are easy to watch by yourself or with people, and have interesting subject matters and symbols that can potentially spark conversation afterwards. Um, and that's why you know, one of the reasons why I like film is that, you know, walking out of the theater and discussing it, um, which has been kind of dwindled over the years, or, you know, now the
The
only kind
culture.
of things that you can say is, I liked the movie, I hated the movie, or, oh yeah, it's different, which is a non descriptor. Um, well, you know, let's bring conversation back. Let's bring the culture of talking about cinema, talking about symbols and philosophy and all these things. Let's bring it. Let's start the culture around storytelling and passing down um, lessons and all these things that are encoded in stories. Let's bring the culture and
Bring up an
conversation
interesting point,
back that around. Yeah.
because a lot of times when you go to see a movie with a friend or something, I mean, what do? You usually go out to eat before or after. I prefer to go out to eat after so that you can talk about the movie and kind of decompress about it. And I noticed in culture today, movie theaters, yeah, they'll sell you popcorn, overpriced snacks, and so on and so forth. But how much different would it be if, when you exited the movie, there was a cafe to sit and have a coffee and talk about the film afterwards? You just don't
Yeah.
see that kind of thing often.
Yeah, that's why I do like Alamo Drafthouse Cinema. They do have their lounge, um, where people can hang out afterwards with a full functioning bar at all the locations, and it's just bringing back that culture around it. Because even, even when it comes to stories like anywhere from the Bible to, camp stories about, fireside stories about, what goes bump in the night, there's always a conversation that happens afterwards. Like, you know, oh, if what if vampires are real? What if werewolves are real? What would that look like? Or when comes to the Bible, um, not only is there lessons in it, but there's, you know you 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 go to church, and you know your pastor will use examples in the Bible to bring out talking points. There's all that there. So yeah, so here's 5 movies, or 6 depending on how you look at it, that have interesting symbology, interesting stories, um, and are fairly easy to watch, from a few different genres. And hopefully one stuck out to whoever's watching and to the viewers, and pass on that tradition. Go watch one of these movies that stick out to you with a friend and spark that conversation and see what symbols stick out to you when you watch these movies. Is the one of these out of this list that sticks out to you? Is there, when you watch it, is there a symbol that sticks out to you? And think, why does that symbol stick out to you? What does that symbol mean? Or, why is these kind of these kind of stories or archetypes, why do they stick out to you? Why do they appeal to you? Right? Peel back the layers. Yeah, thank you, the Branch, for joining us in this one. I guess you can call this one a special. We did run way over time, but we can call this one a premiere special of Cine Files, top 5. Maybe over time we'll do another top something here on the Cine Files later down the road. I know we have other Cine Files coming up that are shorter topics. And so thanks for watching, everyone. Branch, is there anything else you wanted to say before we close off this episode?
Well, I'd just like to say, if you have any thoughts or feelings to share about any of these films, please be sure to include a comment, and we can have a little bit of dialogue maybe about that. And there's also a King of Cups Telegram that you can join and chat with us there also.
Yep.
If you would like to find me, I'm on Instagram as Appalachian Aesthetic, and you can find some of my other content on YouTube as NPC 3.14 or The Solomon Report.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I'll be back.
And thank you, everyone, for watching the premiere episode of the Cine Files, and of course more files to come.